talking about? There's no equal standing. There are huge racial disparities when it comes to the legal system, especially the criminal justice system. Just look at how much more likely black people are to be incarcerated than Hispanic or white people. I mean, obviously that's the result of oppression. Okay, so to answer the question of oppression in relation to the criminal justice system, which comes up a lot, we first need to return to our definition of oppression. To repeat once more, oppression is prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control. So what this definition means for our discussion here is that black people being more likely to be incarcerated is not evidence in and of itself to prove that they are oppressed. Oppression refers specifically to unjust treatment or unjust punishment. So for oppression to be happening, black people would need to be incarcerated unjustly at a higher rate than other races, right? Because it wouldn't be oppression if these people were being justly arrested and prosecuted for crimes that they actually did commit. So while many social justice activists try to paint the large black prison populations in the US as evidence of oppression, the fact is that black people are more likely to commit crimes than other races. So with this being the case, it is not unjust and therefore not oppressive for the racial makeup of prison populations to be representative of the racial makeup of people who commit crimes. The question here isn't, are there proportionately more black people in prison than white people, because obviously that's the case. The question is why? Is it because prejudice causes more black people than white people to be convicted of crimes that they did not commit? Or is it because on average a black person is more likely to commit a crime than a white person and therefore more likely to go to jail for what they've done? Statistics would indicate the latter. If we take a look at the most dangerous cities in the United States, we see that in general the African American populations of these cities are much higher than the national average. And I'm not bringing this up to go all race realist on you guys, but regardless of who's being charged for these crimes, wrongfully or not, areas that have large or concentrated African American populations also tend to correlate very strongly with areas that have high rates of reported violent crimes. So perhaps our legal system isn't going around willy-nilly convicting innocent black people of crimes they didn't commit. Perhaps individuals who happen to be black are making bad choices for which they have to deal with the consequences. And of course, another thing that's often brought up when it comes to the alleged oppression of non-white people in the US is the fact that African American and Hispanic incomes are much lower than the average white income. Clearly this equals oppression. I mean, come on. But again, like the prison statistics, the wage gap statistics would only be indicative of oppression if they were the result of unjust treatment. Black people and Hispanic people on average earning less than white people would in no way mean there's oppression going on if it was just the result of their comparative lack of skills. And when you look at the average education levels of the different races, it seems like this is actually pretty much the case. And something that I'd like to mention, which really debunks the idea that non-white people in the US are oppressed, is the fact that there are non-white groups out there who on average do better than their white counterparts in terms of education and finances. And yes, felony charges too. So under the SJW narrative, would it be safe to say that black people are the most oppressed, then Hispanic people, then white people, and then maybe Asians aren't oppressed at all? Or maybe they have special Asian privilege? Of course, that's not the case. Look, there are real problems in the black community. There's issues with incarceration, there's issues with drug use, unemployment, poverty, lack of education, fatherlessness. All of those problems are absolutely real, but the thing is, when you make the conversation about oppression and marginalization, it's almost like an abdication of personal responsibility. You're implying that in order to fix this problem, it's the outside world and the system that needs to change instead of your behavior. And look, the system is by no means perfect, but I think as is displayed by the success of Asian Americans, I don't think it's this racist, awful thing that people make it out to be. The United States is a meritocracy, and when we're adults, at least the situations that we find ourselves in are more often than not the result of our own personal decisions. Having the mentality that the system is out to get you and that it won't let you succeed.
In a way, I'm glad that Roaming Millenial made this video where it seems like she just landed on planet Earth from Mars. I would like to say that I'm surprised that I have to debunk Horatio algorithm in 2017, but that would be politically naive, because it would dismiss the foundational conservative argument about why people suffer in societies. The first talking point that you will always get back from conservatives when you tell them that people are poor, hungry, homeless, uneducated, you name it, illiterate, is that it's their fault. Victim blaming is the first pillar in conservative ideology, and I think that it is fueled by one of two things, and I'm not sure which one to assign to Roaming Millenial, but I will start with this. It seems from doing a little research on Roaming Millenial's time in the United States and the prism through which she has observed the economics of this country, I am not going to flag her as a cynic. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is a misunderstanding about statistics, correlation, and causation. I think the title of her video is very, very aggressive and hostile to, and it's not coming from a place of understanding. When you actually watch the video where she talks about oppression, not only is it tone deaf, but it is so boilerplate. It lacks. Look, every conservative commentator eventually traverses that talking point when it comes to when they talk about equality of outcomes and the success economy and all this bullshit that's been debunked for decades now, about why people are poor. I can talk about why people are poor in the global sense, but I'm gonna focus on America, and I'm going to particularly focus on the American inner city because it is my area of understanding. I would say expertise, but I don't have a degree in economics. My understanding is a New York Public Library understanding of these issues, and it is enhanced by my experience as a person living in the inner city, having been born in the inner city during the Reagan era, which was an era of profound poverty for racial and ethnic minorities in urban environments. Okay? So, poverty in the inner city, particularly as it affects criminality, is a product of the skeleton, the remains of American apartheid, right? Meaning that Jim Crow ended less than 100 years ago, and that was apartheid. That was segregation by law. This form of segregation influenced the legal ability of non-white people to get access to wealth. Wealth meaning money that ensures well-being through generations. When it's illegal for you to work in certain places, when it's illegal for you to patronize certain businesses, when it's illegal for you to attend certain schools, you are not going to have the same entrees to privilege that other groups do. And, I'm going to drop the disclaimer here because I know that this is going to be one of the arguments that pops up immediately. Um, I'm not a collective punishment person. No one is asking white people to do anything particularly radical other than slowly pull apart as much as they possibly can the remains of the apartheid system in this country that is still hobbling people of color. I've touched on the myth of black criminality on this channel before, and I know that a lot of conservatives, I wonder if it's just a deflection, this whole, personal responsibility bullshit. It probably is when Bill O'Reilly says it, but I'm going to give Roaming Millenial, who I think her first experience of the United States was very cloistered. She came here as a student, and I don't think she's lived here very long. So the American inner city is a place where cycles of poverty, the inability for people to break out of welfare cycles, and those that do break out of welfare cycles landing in low-income employment, and that low-income employment not including benefits. A proper come-up economically, in order to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you need to have boots. Economics do not occur in a vacuum. The straight line from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration is incontrovertible. The idea that black people are going to jail at a rate higher than other groups is because black people are more irresponsible. Like she disavows race realism, and then endorses sort of this bell curve argument of, and I'm fascinated how someone can make a blanket statement like that of, well, obviously, black people are going to jail because they're not oppressed, because these arrests are justified. They're justified. My opinion, my understanding from coming in the inner city is that crime does not occur in a vacuum, and I would put forth the opinion that before a black kid in an inner city neighborhood robs a grocery store, there are a bunch of societal problems that put him there. And those same existing inequalities that forced the necessity to engage in criminal behavior trump this idea of personal responsibility. Particularly if this person's family was forced to rely on state programs. I knew a lot of kids growing up who were raised by their grandparents, aunts, and uncles because their parents had also been casualties of the cycle of poverty, whether it was through resorting to drug use because they couldn't get by, coping with alcoholism, coping with not being able to get a job after you get out of jail. It is a lot harder for a black man getting out of jail to put his life together than a white man getting out of jail to repair his standing in society. I've always talked about racial privilege being about the benefit of the doubt. So I do not respect the inference that the reason blacks go to jail more than whites and Hispanics is because they're obviously guilty. It's not as simple as that. Number one, because a lot of the convictions of black Americans can be marked up to bias in the juries, bias in the sentencing. There's a lot of statistics to back this stuff up. This is just a general response. We're not going to make any progress in this country on disadvantaged groups by blaming them for being in their situation. It's so simple. It's such binary compassion. If you walk down the street and you see someone that got hit by a car, and then the guy who was driving the car gets out and says, well, this guy jaywalked, so I ran him over. Who gives a fuck if the person who got run over jaywalked? Are you going to say they deserve it because they broke the law? Is the law so just? What matters is that the person is on the ground and they got run over by a fucking car. So please, throw the finger wagging out the window, because that's not going to help anybody. That's not going to help the people who are oppressed by systematic incongruencies in the justice system. That is not going to help the people in the communities that these oppressed people return to. See, what's funny to me about conservatives is that they don't understand that they're cutting off their nose to spite their own face when they advocate for this whole, fuck poor people, abandon those people, fuck oppressed people, dismiss that. They're on their own, take care of themselves. The fury of the dispossessed never remains latent. The people that you disenfranchise and throw away in a society, that's eventually going to float back into your safe space. That's going to come back into your community. That's going to affect your children. So it's in the best interest of everyone that we address not the symptoms, but the cause of this disease of poverty. For people of all colors, for people of all ethnicities, for people of all religions in this country and worldwide. If we keep on treating symptoms of poverty without directly addressing the fact that lack of health care is a result of people not having money. People not having money generally has to do with being disadvantaged in the workplace. So yes, people are oppressed. Yes, it has to do with history, because economics do not occur in a vacuum. As long as the estate tax in the United States under Bush was basically 0% for 10 years, as long as the economic system of apartheid existed in this country for over 100 years, oppression is very real and demonstrable by facts and not simply statistics. I think that the biggest problem with this Roaming Millenial video is that she conflates statistics with facts. You need to actually look deeper than the numbers in order to find out what is actually going on in a society. But it's very convenient for a person in a position of privilege to point to someone else and go, this must be because you're bad. It's much easier to do that than to look around and be like, well, maybe there's a little work to do. Maybe I need to give up some privilege in order for someone else to get by. The harshest truth to confront in an unequal society is that In order for things to become equal, it's going to have to go beyond theoretical, academic equality.